Begin today the Gemara on Daf Pei Gimel Amud Aleph, about 10 lines down from the top of the Yomut. Gufa. So the Gemara here brings back a braisa that one detail was mentioned before. The Gemara is going to go through this whole braisa. So Gufa, here's the braisa itself mentioned before. Ve'elu shebemisa. The following cases are when you're chayev misa bidei shemayim. Okay, so the first one is one that eats from produce where the trumas and maisris were not separated yet, untithed produce. So there's a machlekes rishonim regarding this because there are many different kinds of things to separate. There's the truma gedayla, then there's maiser rishon, there's maiser sheni. So it's machlekes exactly when this is going to be in the category of tevel. If you don't separate truma gedayla, first, the truma, that definitely is chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. Others say, even if you did separate the truma gedayla, but you didn't separate the other maisris, there will also be a chayiv misa b'dei shamayim when you eat from the tevel. Another case, v'kayin tamei she'achal truma tahira. A kayin that he is tamei, and he eats from the truma which is tahir. And v'zar she'achal es truma. Another case, a zar that eats from the truma. Another case, v'zar sheshimish, a zar that does the aveda in the Beis Hamikdash, v'tomei sheshimish, or a kayin that is tamei and he serves and does the aveda in the Beis Hamikdash, u'tful yoim sheshimish, a person that went to the mikveh but he's still a tful yoim. He's not completely tahir. It's still in the day before the night. He's still in that day when he taivoled, so he did aveda. He's also chayiv misa b'dei shemayim, u'mechusar begadim. A kayin that comes to do the aved in the Beis Hamikdash and he's not wearing the big day kohuna, u'mechusar kapara, and a kayin that has to bring a carbon for the kapara and he did not bring the carbon yet, and he comes and does the aveda. V'shalei rochatz yadayim v'raglayim, a kayin that did not wash his hands and feet before he came to do the aveda. U'shesuya yayin, he drank a revius of wine before he did the aveda. U'prueh roish, he allowed his hair to grow long and didn't cut his hair for a period, I think it's 30 days. So in all of these cases, Yechayiv Misa B'dei Shemayim. Now there are Rishonim that mention here, the Mefarshim here mention that this is the Braisa that lists all the cases that Yechayiv Misa B'dei Shemayim, but this list is incomplete. There are additional cases as well. There's a few, like 3, 4, 5 additional cases that for whatever reason are not mentioned here. Aval, Orel, if a kayin is a oral and he did not have a bris, or v'oinen, a relative, a close relative that passed away, and on the day that it passed away, or v'yoshev, a kayin that does his aveda in the Beis Hamikdash while he's sitting, einan b'misa, so the aveda that's done in this way will not be chayiv misa ela ba'azhara. There's only a lav for this. Balmum. A balmum that does the aveda in the kayin, a balmum of the blemish, and he does the aveda Rabbi Yomer b'misa, Rabbi Yomer that he is chayiv misa. The Chachamim Yomer b'azhara. Chachamim say that it's only a lav. Hizid b'meila, regarding one that's moil, he's nana, he has a na from anything of kachim, and so regarding this, also there's a machlokes. Rabbi Yomer b'misa, it's chayiv misa b'dei shemayim. The Chachamim Yomer b'azhara. The Chachamim say it's only a azhara of a lav. This is the Braisa. Okay. Now the Gemara is going to go through every single detail of this Braisa to explain what's the source for this. So the Gemara begins. Ha'eichel es tevel, one that eats tevel, minola. From where do we know that it's chayiv misa b'dei shemayim? What's the source for this? Because the pasuk says, "V'lo yechalalu es kodshe b'nei Yisrael es asher yarimu l'Hashem." You should not be mechal kodshe b'nei Yisrael. Now the term kodshe b'nei Yisrael in this pasuk is referring to truma, but the pasuk uses the term asher yarimu, which is a future tense. Ba'asidim litram akosav medaber. This refers to what is going to be separated in the future, meaning it's talking about produce that the truma was not separated yet, and on that the pasuk says the term of yechalalu, v'lo yechalu, do not desecrate. So therefore we learn out the following Zayda Shava. V'yalef chilul mitruma. We learn out the term chilul that it says here from the term chilul that it says by truma. Ma halon b'misa, just like by the truma, if one eats truma when he's tomei, so the einish is misa, as the Gemara is going to bring soon for this, the misa b'dei shemayim, afkan b'misa. Here as well, it's misa. And the lashon chilul that it says by truma is shomres mishmarte v'lisol meisud by ki luhu. Here it says the term ki luhu, And here it says v'lo yechalalu. That's the gzeira shava that we learn out, that if you eat from tevel, you chayiv misa. But the Gemara asks on this, we know that there's this gzeira shava. So every gzeira shava is halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So there was a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that there is a gzeira shava of chilul. But how do you know it's regarding the chilul that it says by eating from the truma when one is tameh? V'neilev chilul minaisa. Maybe the gzeira shava is from the term chilul that it says by naisa. There the pasuk says vayichlav avayna yisa ki es kodesh Hashem chilal v'nichrisa. So over there, what's the einish kares? Not misa b'dei shemayim. Kares and misa b'dei shemayim are a little different. Kares is actually a harsher punishment. By Kares, it's not only a misa b'dei shemayim, but also his descendants. He doesn't have any continuation of generations, of children. That's the einish of Kares, even more than misa b'dei shemayim. So maybe we should learn out by eating from tevel that it's compared to by noisa. When one eats from noisa, there's Kares. Ma'ala alon b'Kares, avkan b'Kares. So the Gemara says, no, if you have this option to learn out the chilul from eating by truma when one is tomei, or to learn out from noisar, mistavre mitruma v'leila meilav. It's more logical to learn out dafke from truma. Why? And here the Gemara is going to bring a couple of different svaris of the comparison. So number one, shekain truma. Because in both cases, we're talking about something that's related to truma. So Rashi's pshat for this is, both by tevel, the isser of eating tevel before you separate the truma is because you're essentially eating the truma that's mixed into the produce before you separate that truma. That's Rashi's pshat. From here you see that according to Rashi, what's the concept of tevel? Tevel means that the truma is mixed in. The truma is already there. Elamai, it wasn't separated yet. And that's why when you're eating from the tevel, you're essentially eating truma. This Tosfos, though, disagrees with this. In another place, not here, Tosfos says that tevel is not truma mixed in. He didn't take the truma yet. The truma is not there yet. But the tevel means that you did not separate the truma. So when the Gemara says the term shekain truma, it means that there it's a case of truma, a kohen that eats from truma when he's tameh. And here, the issur of tevel is that you're supposed to separate the truma. So it's related to truma, but not that it's actually truma mixed in yet. The other thing that's compared by the two here is chutzal aretz. These are both that are only relevant in Eretz Yisrael. Whether we're talking about the truma or the tevel, this is all in Eretz Yisrael. In chutzal aretz it doesn't apply. Whereas by noisar, it is shayach that the yisur of noisar should be even in chutzal aretz. In the time when you were able to bring a carbon on a bama and so on, there was a time where it's possible that there should be, the Midbar Rashi says, outside of Eretz Yisrael, there's also the yisur of noisar. Another thing, hutra. By both, there's a heter. When you get to tevel, there's a heter. Separate the truma, and then you're able to eat the produce. And the same by the kohen, that's tameh. He can't eat the truma. There's a heter. If he goes to the mikveh and he becomes tired, he can eat from the truma. And that heter does not apply by noiser. By noiser, there's no heter. Once it's noiser, you have to burn it. You can't eat from it. Another comparison is berabim. The term chilul that it says by both of them is a plural term. It says meisi by ki yechalaluhu, or v'lo yechalalu. That's the lashon it says by tevel, and by truma the lashon of the pasuk is ki yechalaluhu. Whereas by naisar it uses the term chilel, which is a singular term. Another comparison is peiris. Both cases of truma it's with produce, not by naisar. And the last thing is pigul v'naisar. By naisar, there's a din of pigul, it's a carbon, and a din of naisar, all related to a carbon. Mashenkin here, we're talking about produce. By tevel and by truma, where there's no din of pigul, there's no union of naisar. So therefore, it makes sense to compare the two terms of chilul, to compare from tevel to truma, when a kohen eats truma that's tameh, and not to naisar. But the Gemara asks on this, Adarab, on the contrary, I'll bring you svaris, why minoisa v'leila meilaf, that you should learn out the term v'lo yechalu, that it says by tevel, dafker from naisar. Shekain, because the reason is, number one, puzzle. That in both cases, by the tevel and by the naisar, we're talking about food that is puzzle to eat. Or psul oichel, you read it together. Shekain psul oichel. There's something about this food that's puzzle to eat. In the case of the kohen that's tameh, it's different. Over there, it's the guf, it's the person there, the kohen that's tameh, and therefore he's not allowed to eat the truma. There's nothing that's puzzle about the food of the truma itself. And another thing also, ein loi heter b'mikveh. In both cases, there's no heter through toiveling in a mikveh. By the kohen that's tameh, that's eating from the truma, so he has a heter to be toivel in the mikveh. Both by tevel and naisa, there's a comparison that heter does not apply. So therefore, you have these two svaras why you should make the gzeira shava dafka to naisa. So the Gemara says, well, but Hanach Nefishin, the svaras that we brought before to compare the Tevel to the Trumah when a Kohen is Tameh, there's much more reasons to compare them than here. Or another pshat the Gemara says, Ravina says, Chilul de Rabim, Michilul de Rabim Odif. The fact that the actual term of Chilul is the plural term, that overrides all reasons, because the Gzeira Shava is the actual comparison of the two words, and the fact that it's the same word of Chilul Lashon Rabim, that's the reason, that's the source of why we say Dafka this, Gzeira Shava. The next thing it said in the Braise, the one that's Chayiv Misa B'dei Shemayim, is V'koyin Tomei She'achal Trumet Tahira. So what's the source for this? Minalan, Tama Shmuel said, Minay l'koyin tomei she'achal trumet tahira shehu b'misa b'dei shemayim. The Chsiv, because the pasuk says, V'shamru es mishmarti v'lo yisu olav chet. So in the continuation of the pasuk there it says, U'meisu b'ki chalalu ani Hashem mekacham. This is the same pasuk that was quoted before regarding the Gzeira Shava. Now this pasuk is talking about trumah. In the pasuk before the V'shamris Mishmarti, it's talking about a kohen that's tamei, as Rashi brings. It's in Parshas Emor. Ishish mizera Aaron, that if he's tamei, he shouldn't eat from trumah that's tahir. Now the Gemara says on this, tahira in tamei aloi, that a kohen is only chayiv misa b'dei shemayim if he's tamei and he eats from trumah which is tahir. But if he eats from trumah which is tamei and he's also tamei, even though he's not supposed to eat this trumah, but he's not going to be chayiv misa b'dei shemayim. Dama Shmuel, Amar Rabbi Lazar, minayin lekoyin tamei, she'achal trumah tameya, she'ena b'misa, koyin that's tamei and he eats from the trumah which is tamei. So there the misa b'dei shemayim does not apply. Shenema, because here when it says the chayiv misa, it says umeisu bai ki chalaluhu, that when he ate from the trumah was still tired, and he ate from it, he desecrated the trumah. And therefore that excludes this case where the trumah was already tamei before he ate from it, and here the chiyuv misa b'dei shemayim will not apply.
So no one is allowed to eat trumah tamei?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, right. The trumah tamei is supposed to be burnt, but if he does go ahead and eats it, you're not chiyuv misa b'dei shemayim. The next case it said in the Braise, V'zar shachal es hatrumah. A zar that eats trumah is also chiyuv misa b'dei shemayim. Omer Rav, zar shachal es hatrumah loike. So Rav actually says, a zar that eats from trumah only gets malchus, not misa b'dei shemayim. Malei Rav Kahana, v'Ravasi l'Rav, both Rav Kahana and Ravasi said to Rav, le'memar b'misa. You should say that you chayiv misa, because in the pasuk that we just quoted here, that it says that a kohen that's tamei that eats from the trumah that's tahir. This pasuk umeisu b'ki chalalu. What's the very next pasuk? The chsiv right afterwards. The pasuk says v'chol zar lo yechol kodesh, that a zar should not eat from kodesh. And the kodesh the pasuk there is talking about is the trumah. And it says it right after the previous pasuk where it says umeisu b'ki chalalu. So therefore Rav Kahana and Rav Asi are saying that the fact that in the next pasuk it says v'zar lo yechol kodesh right after umeisu b'ki chalalu is the source that a zar that eats is also going to be umeisu b'ki, that he's desecrating v'zar. It's a continuation that he also is going to be chayiv v'chol zar, that is he's also going to be chayiv misa b'dei shemayim. Okay, so Rav answers and says no, ani Hashem mekatsham hifsek inyan. After the end of that pasuk that we just quoted, the pasuk there concludes, Ani Hashem mekatsham, meaning that the kohen, I was mekadesh them, that if a kohen that's tamei eats from trumah tahira, he's going to be chayiv misa. But then the next pasuk is a separate inyan, and there's no chayiv misa for a zar that eats from the trumah. So the Gemara asks, but how could Rav say this? The Braise here says different. Meisvei, they asked Rav, and it says in the Braise, Zar oichel es hatrumah. The Zar eats trumah, is chayiv misa b'dei shemayim. And says the Gemara, Masnita, ad Rav karamis. You're asking on Rav a question from this Braise? Rav knew from this Braise. But Rav, Tanahu upalig. Rav is on the level of a Tana, and therefore you can argue with what it says in this Braise. All right, so this is the Gemara brings this not that many times, but the Gemara does bring this quite a number of times regarding this koyach of Rav to argue, and this is one of the cases. It doesn't mean that Rav was actually a Tana. I mean, Rav was a Talmud of Rebbe, Rabbeinu HaKadosh. He was sort of the first generation of Dalmiroim, but nevertheless, his greatness was like a Tana, and he's able to argue in a Mishnah or a Braise. Again, Azar. We're talking about Azar.
Yeah, but beide.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, b'chayra. Okay, the next case it said in the Braise of Vizar Sheshimish. A zar that does the Aveda in the Beis HaMikdash is chayiv misa b'dei shemayim. The chsiv, there's a clear pasuk, it says, V'azar akarev yumas. Now the next case, V'tomei Sheshimish, a Tomei that serves in the Beis HaMikdash, says the Gemara, K'debai minei Rav Chiya bar Avim merav Yosef. Abchiva Rav asked Rav Yosef about this. Minayin letami sheshimesh shehu b'misa. A kohen that's tummy that serves in the Beis Hamikdash is chayav misa b'dei shemayim. The pasuk says, Daber al Aaron ve'al banov v'yinazru mikotche b'nei Yisrael v'lo yechalalu Hashem kotchi. So here it uses the term v'yinazru. They should separate from kotche b'nei Yisrael v'lo yechalalu. They should not desecrate. This refers to a kohen that is tummy that's serving in the Beis Hamikdash. Now, how do you know that he's chayiv misa? Because v'yalef chilul mitruma. It says here the term of v'lo yechalalu. As the pasuk we quoted before, it says the term chilul by a kohen that's tummy that eats from truma. Ma'alalom b'misa, afkan b'misa. So we learn out from there misa b'dei shemayim, just like the gzeira shava we had before as well, similar over here. But again, the Gemara asks the same question, goes through a similar discussion. V'neilef chilul min naisar. Maybe compare the term chilul that it says by a kohen that serves while he's tamei from naisar, and ma'alalon koris. So it's not misa b'dei shemayim, but it's koris. By naisar, it's koris afkan koris. Says the Gemara, mistavre mitruma havelela melaf. There's a svara to learn now, dafke from truma, for a few reasons. Number one, shekain guf, because in both cases we're talking about an issue with the guf of the person. In both cases, it's the kohen that's tamei. His guf is tamei and he's eating from truma, or his guf is tamei and he's serving in the Beis Hamikdash, which is not the case by naisar. By naisar, the issue is with the naisar itself, not with the guf of the person eating it. And also tamei. In both cases, we're talking about the kohen which is tamei. And in both cases, it's mikveh. He can be mitayed himself by going to the mikveh, which doesn't apply by naisar. And also berabim. In both cases, the term chilul that it says in the pasuk is a plural term, and by naisar the term chilul is a singular term. But the Gemara asks, there's also reasons in svaras why you should learn out the gzeira shava dafka from naisar. Number one, shekain kodesh. In both cases, we're dealing with kodesh, whether the kohen that's tamei is serving and doing the avodah with kachim, or naisar is also from kachim, mamish kachim from the Beis Hamikdash, whereas by truma it's not on the same level as kachim. And also pnim, they're both regarding the avodah that's regarding pnim, inside the Beis Hamikdash, whether the avodah of the kohen or the naisar, which is also from a carbon that's inside the Beis Hamikdash, and also pigul the naisar. They're both regarding karbanis, whether the aveda or naisar, which is regarding karbanis, where there's a din of pigul and there's a din of naisar, which doesn't apply by truma. So why are you learning out dafka from truma? So the Gemara answers. So over here, the svaris is not necessarily more svaris in the other way, but nevertheless, chilul derabim michilul derabim adif. The actual word itself, where dafke by truma tmeya, or a kohen which is tamei that is, and eats from truma while he's tamei, it uses the term chilul, a plural term. The word itself, since it's plural by both, that's dafke what we learn out. The next case the Braisa said tful yoim sheshimish. A tful yoim that he's already tabled, but he still did not wait until at night, and he's still not fully toy, and he does the aveda. So from where do I know that it's chayiv misa b'dei shemayim? The Tanya Rab Simoy yoimer remez l'tful yoim shem avad chilal. Where's the hint that tful yoim that serves he's mechalal minayin tamad loyma kedoshim yiu lelekayim v'lo yechalalu. So why is the Torah here saying again regarding the kohanim that do the aveda that they shouldn't desecrate? We already had the pasuk before, so the Gemara explains, if this pasuk is not needed to say for a kohen that's tamei that serves in the Beis Hamikdash, because the nafkalon we already learned out from the other pasuk quoted before that it says in Parshas Emor, miviya nazru. So over here when it says in Parshas Kedoshim yil lekayim, what is this pasuk coming to say? Taneyu inyan l'tful yoim sheshimish. This pasuk is speaking about the tful yoim sheshimish. And therefore, it uses over here the term of v'lo yichalu as well. So v'yalev chilul mitrume ma'alalom b'misa afkan b'misa. We compare from the trume when a kohen that's tamei that eats from the trume that's chayiv misa b'dei shemayim, and here as well. For some reason, the Gemara uses the term of remez. Rab Simoy said that this is a remez, but this is the source. It's a kohen that's mishamish. It's asur min atayr. It's not stam remez. It's asur min atayr, and it's chayiv misa b'dei shemayim. On the choseh begadim, a kohen that serves in the Beis Hamikdash without wearing all the big day kohona is also chayiv misa b'dei shemayim minalon. Amar Rabavo, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Umati ba Mishmei de Rabbi Lazar, but Rabbi Shimon, because the pasuk says v'chagarta oisam avneit, that Moshe Rabbeinu will put on the begadim for the kohanim. You put them on the gartel, and then so and the pasuk there continues, and it says v'hoisa lehem kohuna l'chok hasaylam. What it means is that only then, when a kohen wears his begadim, bizman shebigdeiim aleim kuhunasam aleim, then they have kohuna. Ein bigdeim aleim. It's not only that they're lacking the begodim. Ein kuhunasam aleim. The title of being a kohen, they're missing the whole koyach of kohuna, and therefore v'havalu zarim. A kohen that serves without the begodim is the same like a zar, like any Yisrael that comes and does the aveda. And v'amamar zar sheshimish b'misa, as we brought before the pasuk by a zar, ba'azar a cut of yumas that a zar is chayiv misa. From where do we know that a kohen that had to bring a kapara, carbon for a kapara, and he did not, and he does the aveda, is chayiv misa? This is regarding, I think, a Yildis that has to bring a carbon. So, and when she brings a carbon, then it says v'taheda. So it says v'taheda taheda meklal shitmeya, until she brings oral karbanis, there's still a level of tumah on her. And the same would apply by a kayin, that he would still, there's still a union of tumah. And v'amamar tamish shimish is b'misa. A kohen that enters to serve and he doesn't wash his hands and feet first, minola, that is chayiv misa. So it's a clear pasuk that only if he washes his hands he won't die. The conclusion of the pasuk is and then it says and also over there as well it says ufruei reish, a kohen that did not take a haircut for 30 days. The pasuk says reisham lo yigalechu pera lo yishalechu ksiv basrei v'yayin lo yishtu. So we compare the two. It speaks about that he should not let his hair grow long and not drink wine when he goes to do the aveda. Iskish perua reish l'shasuya yayin. We compare the two. Ma shasuya yayin b'mise af perua reish b'mise. This is the source where you see by both of them. Okay, then the Gemara goes on to the rest of the Braisa, where it says other cases where there's a machlokes if it's chiyav misa or a hasara.